Hi, my name is Guy Fraker, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Insurance Thought Leadership, or ITL for short. Welcome to the Innovator Studio, and welcome to my video blog. I want to be sensitive to your time, so that's pretty much it for the intro. I just wanted to take a moment and tell you welcome, and thank you for coming by. We hope you find this useful. Today, what I'm going to cover is the 6 key areas of decision making that senior executive teams should know ahead of time they're going to face as they consider their innovation system. So one of the reasons a lot of large companies have a hard time operating or getting off the ground well with innovation systems is quite simply because they're not quite sure how to start, and there are bends in the road along the way. And I cannot tell you how many executives have said to me, I wish I'd have known ahead of time that X was going to happen. So the purpose of this installment is to walk through, in a broad sense, what are the 6 key decisions that you either face at the beginning or at some point in the management of consistent innovation growth platform. We'll go through these fairly quickly, as I know your time's limited, and I want to respect that. So, number 1, and this sounds obvious, but are you sure? There are these key decisions that corporate leadership teams face, and they have to understand you may want to innovate out in the marketplace, and you may want to innovate with new products and services, but you have to understand success at innovating at a scale that will move the needle on your organization means you have to disrupt your own company to some varying degree. I'll talk about the difference between culture change and growth platforms. Our context is always that you innovate for growth. Now, the goal for this presentation, of course, is to help create clarity around what does that mean when we say disrupt internally. Number 2, decide early on what your strategy is going to be. Be clear about why you're innovating. And as I said a minute ago, there's a lot of conversation about, do we innovate for growth and let the growth change the culture, or do we need to be in a more innovative culture in order to grow? Let me be emphatically clear. You innovate for growth, culture change comes with success. Innovation actually thrives on constraints. And so it pays early on to be intentional about knowing how you're going to approach innovation. One of the questions I get the most often is, there is a universe of opportunity and possibilities. How do we know where to begin? And that's a great question, because that's one of the first constraints that you want to set up, is identifying the technology or the trend or the demographic group that you want to be the focus for your innovation efforts. Now, because innovation thrives on constraints, that means there's a lot of explore and contract, open up and narrow down, which, if people are passionate about what they do and passionate about their ideas, does mean managing through some constructive conflict. Next, from a reality check, you can create new products and services all the way to innovating new markets and entire new industrial sectors. Where organizations trip up is they don't plan on the front end of innovation, and then they don't go to market differently on the back end of innovation. You want to lay the groundwork ahead of time. It's important in your early planning that you have business units on board as collaborators or as partners, a couple of which may surprise you. Bringing on entrepreneurs or cultivating an entrepreneurial spirit within an organization is often atypical to long-term KPIs and incremental improvement. It's important to have HR on board. You may have to create new job descriptions, new job classes, incent differently and move rather quickly when you make those decisions. So you want HR on board and have them understand what is probably going to be coming their way. Second is corporate law. Now, I've had more than a few people say to me, if corporate law is supposed to be one of the more innovative divisions in our company, isn't that one of the 7 signs of the apocalypse? And I laugh all the time and I say, no, actually, they're a key enabler, because you will go through a lot of non-disclosure agreements, you will explore a lot of alliances, and you'll be looking at different approaches to mitigating risk. A key corporate partner for all of those is corporate law. And then you've got corporate communications. You may need to launch a website, you may need to launch a subsidiary. You'll want a communication plan internally as well as externally for any sort of innovation effort that's going on, and plan ahead of time for how those communications are going to work. One of the most impacting incentives in the building of innovation systems is actually a letter. When somebody submits an idea from deep within an organization and they get a thank you letter from the CEO or the CFO or a chief operating officer, thanking them just for submitting the idea. And you want to have a conversation with your corporate communications about internal transparency. Next, deciding the basics. And what do I mean by deciding the basics? Well, the old cliche about we need to think more out of the box is said so often that a lot of times people actually apologize before they say it. And what I tell people all the time is, you actually want to think in a box, but you want to build the right box. You want the parameters of that box to be the borders and the boundaries that you set ahead of time and are willing to adjust. That gives everybody permission to think differently to a degree, to explore within a comfort zone that everybody agrees to, and more importantly, building this box, if you will, is how you get your entire corporate leadership team on the same page and in agreement from the get-go. Because once you start on looking at new companies, startups, investments, new ideas from within the company, new ideas from customers, it can get chaotic in a hurry. So you want to start out by selecting, as I said, the demographic group and or technological solution that you want to use as a focus point, an anchor point, if you will, or a domain where you will develop expertise. Now, within your organization, you may very well already have a domain selected. Maybe it's data, big data, maybe it's analytics, maybe it's artificial intelligence or machine learning. And that's a good place to start. Boiling the ocean and wide open blue sky is fun and exciting for a while. It's not going to move the needle, and it's not going to move the needle fast. You want to select a technology or a trend. Once that's done, there are 2 sets of boundaries. And it isn't, those 2 sets of boundaries aren't inbounds and out of bounds, which is just it dawned on me what immediately may come to mind. One set of boundaries is around the domain. Another set of boundaries is around the organizational model. This typically can take anywhere from half a day to a day and a half with an executive team to set. But going through this exercise, I promise, can set you on a path for a year or 2 where they don't have to be revisited, and it gives, again, everybody room to maneuver at a pace that is what you would want for your innovation team. Next, you want to figure out what kind of structure do you want. So for the most commonly used innovation structures starting out are 2 models. One, where groups of people within each individual business unit are responsible for driving out innovation in that business unit. And so that's integrated and dispersed. The other is a separate unit that is responsible for soliciting, vetting, and developing ideas, concepts, and even startup investment opportunities. Either one will work starting out. I've seen organizations go from setting up a separate business unit and then evolve to having a more distributed model. Get used to the notion in this space of innovation of continuous iteration, continuous improvement. And so, very often, business models pivot. You've got to have support at the C-suite level. There's no way to do something that will challenge the status quo within the organization as much as this will if you don't have your C-suite on board. So how are you going to resource this? Are you going to have a dedicated team? Are you going to have a floating team? Or are you going to rely on what are called virtual resources, which is a code for we're going to leave people in their day job, but they're going to do this part-time? And who do they report to? The creation process is exciting, challenging, and it's hard enough that somebody has to lead. So, and an important thing to note, highly effective executives, even highly effective executives that are considered entrepreneurial in most mid-sized to large corporations, operate in a way that is quite different from highly effective entrepreneurs who are founders of a company. And I will tell you, you need to have somebody that's very credible and can maneuver the relationships within an organization, but you also have to have somebody who appreciates and respects the fact that true entrepreneurs operate in a much different way and will give them the latitude to do that. Next, I'm always a very strong advocate for off-the-shelf innovation platforms. Many organizations choose to build their own. It's a long road to town. Some organizations will choose to go without. And I will tell you that a good innovation platform, i.e. software product that helps you manage, vet, score, share, solicit new concepts and ideas and tracks their development, is worth anywhere from 3 to 5 full-time employees, starting out before Idea 1 is submitted. And then you want to be clear what are the expectations for your internal existing business units. If they are all supposed to become more innovative or launch innovation practices, that's one thing. If they are supposed to share resources or drop everything and weigh in on an idea under development, that's something else. One of the more well-kept secrets that inhibits innovation in large corporations is the fact that innovation lives or dies in the middle of the organization. Part of your communication strategy should be specifically around how is the word going to trickle down, and how are you going to manage the soft spots where participation may be slow in coming. We all wish that it were as easy as the C-suite executive saying, we shall do this moving forward, and it shall be done. As we all know, that's not quite how it works sometimes when you are trying to do something that's very different than the traditional day-to-day routine. We've been through having discussions around commitment and as a leadership team, are you sure you want to do this? Deciding on some initial strategies and approaches, some basic structure and boundary setting, which are important constraints. How are you going to resource? This is going to be a quick item in this discussion, but you want to think in terms of building an innovation portfolio. Whatever tools you use, whether they're off the shelf, modified, or built from within, you want to be able to coordinate and have a single view of your approach to innovation as it is playing out in the ideas, concepts, startups, and early stage investment that are being considered. Finally, know that things are really going to get interesting when it's time to go to market. A startup with a fresh approach and a new idea will go to market, and their entire goal is to scale and get traction. Organizations who typically measure growth in single-digit percentages often way underestimate what it's going to take to scale a new concept in a marketplace to the degree that a large existing portfolio of products is positively impacted. Again, from my perspective, and based on 10 years of experience, you innovate for growth and everything else follows. So, how do you go to market with new ideas and concepts? It's a very good idea way before any concept or idea gets to this point to have this conversation. You want to make sure that that idea strongly reconciles three broad constituencies. There's a consumer segment, and that consumer segment has a job to be done, or a customer segment. There is your technological solution to meeting that job, fulfilling that job, and you have prepared the business requirements, or you have the business acumen to push that out into the marketplace and have it be compliant and successful and have the revenue stream make sense. And when you reconcile and combine all three of these successfully, a good probability you have a solution that can go viral. But the best new concepts and ideas are a platform for their own continuous innovation that you can build upon for years to come. In order to get a scale quickly, to the degree that you are paying for your innovation process and returning money to the organization early, new concepts may not be distributed in the marketplace through your typical distribution methods or through your existing distribution-related business units. Very often, a new idea or concept should come out of a company like a startup, or even as a startup. What that means is having a team of people, having the right mix or team of people who will be dedicated and pounding the streets and using all the available resources to get out and get feedback and recommend changes. And so there may be an existing startup that you invest in or acquire that matches your vision of this new idea that you want to take to the market. Or you may have to hire a team. And I'll tell you that hiring small teams as entrepreneurs for something that is the equivalent of a startup venture is very counterintuitive for most large organizations. This is a very difficult step. Getting it right means you could be moving the needle for the overall organization with a new product or service easily within 5 years. This is an old cliche at this point. Everybody's heard. If you've had anything to do with agile development or lean startup, but it's important. And this is one of the aspects of innovation in insurance that is a particular challenge. The whole notion of engaging in a risk management product live in the marketplace that is not perfectly baked has lawsuit and compliance and regulatory challenges written all over it. Well, not necessarily the case. There are design methods and specific steps that can be taken to get feedback from something that is essentially live without putting the portfolio and the company assets at risk. So you want to get used to the idea of launching imperfectly, iterate based on feedback, have a roadmap for ongoing development, leverage the methodologies of agile development lean startup. And ideas should be kicked out to go to market with a funding mindset that's very similar to an early stage investment. So those are 6 big buckets of decisions, if you will, that all executives have to face. The goal of this presentation is to give you a heads up on the fact that there's no way to avoid any of these. If you are involved in an existing innovation system or getting ready to launch a new one or thinking about launching a new one, these are the big landmines. I would encourage you to provide feedback and certainly check in if you would like additional detail or would like to take a day and talk about any or all of these in greater detail on your site, and we're happy to do that. Thank you.